This has gone too far, and following what has been a crazy few weeks surrounding the Mitch Marner saga, Elliot Friedman has come out and dropped a bombshell report surrounding Mitch Marner, revealing some new information that has fans fired up. To break down exactly what that is and discuss what this means going forward, as well as a few other updates surrounding the Toronto Maple Leafs. Folks, you're going to want to stay tuned for all this one, but before we get into it all, if you're a part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, you guys have been absolute beasts. If you're part of the 71% who aren't subscribed, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys again for your continued support. Dears, we're going to be talking about Mitch Marner. There's not much time left until, of course, his decision is going to be made, but reports are starting to pick up, and there is a new report that has dropped that is a little bit surprising. Now, we knew there was some, not necessarily beef, but some tension there between the Leafs camp and the Leafs camp Marner's camp and Leafs camp, going back to a while here, going back for a while. A brand new report has dropped from Elliot Friedman, and it highlights a bunch of different things, and we'll dive into the Elliot Friedman one. We know that his summer charity event was canceled, but according to Elliot Friedman, the Leafs have tried to engage with Marner's camp, but there has been no response. Some teammates quietly believe he plans to head west, with LA and Vegas seen as possible destinations like we discussed a few days ago. But this is new information, Darius. No response between the Leafs camp, meaning, or I guess from Marner's camp, from the Leafs. The Leafs are not getting any, I guess, text back, if you want to say it that way, from Mitch Marner. And there's also been talks that he's going to be exploring a shorter deal, which we'll dive into in a minute here, but no response. Is it surprising? I would say it's a little bit surprising, especially given the way that, he's been here for his entire Leafs tenure. But is it shocking? Maybe not as much, because of the way, you can almost see this coming with the way that he's kind of conducted himself over the past year, even dating back to last offseason.
And it might not just be you. The Toronto Maple Leafs are also getting ghosted right now by Mitch Marner, which is pretty interesting. And by all accounts and all reports that he is not responding to them right now. But I think that, and one thing that I can actually respect through this whole kind of debacle situation, whatever you want to call it, is that Mitch Marner and his camp said that they were going to do something from the beginning, and they followed through with it. So that that I can at least respect from the outside looking in. But, during the season, they said we did not want to negotiate. We were going to maybe negotiate before the season started. That passed. They said we're not negotiating in season. We're not even going to negotiate postseason. We are going to go to July 1st. And that was reported a long time ago. Now, obviously, I think Brad Treliving was trying to make some things happen. He was trying to get that contract done. Once he knew that that wasn't going to happen, he was trying to trade Mitch Marner at the trade deadline. We went through that as well. And now we're at this point where Mitch Marner, we'll get to it in a second, is going to have meetings with a bunch of different teams, including the Toronto Maple Leafs. And keep in mind, Mitch Marner, listen, I think that he's leaving, and I think that it would be in the best interest of the Toronto Maple Leafs to part ways with this player. But he hasn't actually come out and said, or his camp, I am not returning. And they are going to be taking a meeting from the Toronto Maple Leafs. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to resign. I do think that there is a world, and things and feelings can change very quickly on a dime. We know that in any situation, not just sports, but there is a situation where maybe he goes and checks out a couple other teams. He has a feel for like what they could offer him in terms of a contract, AAV and term, which I think he wants 4 years, maybe 5 years at this point. I think there's a world that he sees all those presentations and then sees the Leafs and goes, maybe I am more comfortable at home. But with the way that the season ended and the fact that, he hasn't performed for the Leafs in the playoffs, I think that it would be something insane to bring him back. I think that would be absolutely insane. Again, it's not off the table yet in terms of, Marner hasn't canceled or anything like that, hasn't said that he's not going to come back, but and he is taking a meeting from the Leafs, but all signs point to he will not be returning, and I don't think that the Leafs should re-sign him.
Yeah, I mean, no response is interesting because the only benefit, I guess, for, having, I guess, when you're going to unrestricted free agency, of course, the only benefit for the team is that you get to talk to them beforehand. You get to have the opportunity to negotiate before free agency opens up. For the Leafs, clearly that's not going to happen because they're getting no response. And there's other teams interested. The Kings, Vegas, all signs point to him testing the market, picking a team, signing a deal, and leaving Toronto. That's from Freeman as well. So now Freeman, for the first time, has doubled down on him leaving Toronto. There's also been talk, though, that Marner may be looking for a 7-year deal, but something shorter, like a 4-year deal, which is extremely interesting as well, which we've kind of discussed. And there's also this past season unfolded almost exactly how Marner and his camp planned it from day one. The idea was to keep contract talks on hold, focus on the team, and let the year play out, a strategy both sides agreed on. Marner had a strong regular season, and while the playoffs didn't go as hoped, the criticism he gets in Toronto isn't entirely fair. He's often been the scapegoat. I mean, I'm not going to dive into that part, but from Darren Ferris's perspective and things like that, that's what, shout out to Brad Treliving to a degree. He noticed this early, and I think that he knew that he was going to be leaving unless the Leafs won the cup, and that's why they tried to move him at the deadline. Mitch Marner, that is, didn't work out because, of course, Mitch Marner had the no move clause. We can go back and forth all day about how Dubas messed that up and Brendan Shanahan, all these different people. But at the end of the day, the reality is there's a chance now that he leaves because, this is from Darren Dreger, these two, by the way, because Marner has earned the right to do what he's going to do, which is explore free agency, listen to offers. But this is important from Darren Dreger. He hasn't, like you mentioned, he hasn't closed the door on the Leafs, and there's no indication he's told Brad Treliving he won't return. But at the same time, the feeling is there hasn't been a whole lot of love between the two sides. And then you pair that with Elliot Friedman coming out and saying there's been no response. Maybe no response is a little bit too far, but I mean, it's the reality. It is. Maybe Treliving's frustrated. It's possible he would have liked to get something done earlier. Still, Marner's following the plan they set out from the start. So it's the plan they've wanted. It's the plan that everybody in the Marner camp wanted. But for the Leafs, it almost leaves them partially screwed unless he comes out and realizes that the grass isn't greener on the other side. And there is still a possibility that happens. But at the same time, the money amount is just absolutely absurd. We're talking about the Hurricanes being interested, the Vegas Golden Knights being interested, the Knights, the Ducks, all these different teams. I'm sure some random teams will be thrown out there. The Tampa Bay Lightning could find a way to get them. Like, it's not out of the realm of possibility. So it's the situation has almost gone too far. I'm ready for it to be over.
Yeah, and we've been talking about this for the last week or 2 weeks at this point, that he hasn't officially said he doesn't want to return. Again, he's taking that meeting with the Toronto Maple Leafs closer to July 1st, right? So I just want to make it clear that a lot of people on the channel think that we're either defending him or think that he might come back. Like, I don't think he should come back, and I don't think he is coming back at this point. I just want to make that clear. And, in terms of where this came from, coming from Darren Dreger, we know obviously everything that's happened in the past with Darren Ferris as well. Some of this reads like it is kind of from Darren Ferris or the Mitch Marner camp as well. The fact that, he's always been the scapegoat. There's a reason for that. Austin Matthews and William Nylander, for example, do they come up big in the big moments? Not always, which is a problem, but I have seen them do that. I've never seen Mitch Marner do that. In fact, I think we actually have a stat, and it's an insane one, that Marner's last goal in a game 5, 6, or 7 of a series was 8 seasons ago, and Thomas Plekanec was on the team and playing in that game, and he scored in that same game. That's absurd to me. He just doesn't come up big in these moments. You can't have a guy who makes that much money playing on the team, holding the team or the rest of the team up with that money, not come up big in those moments. And it would be a completely different conversation if he did, right? But he just hasn't ever. So that's the reason that he's been the guy. That the whole narrative switched on Nylander. I wanted to bring this up as well. When Nylander first came in, he was in Mitch Marner's position now, but with his play and the fact that he took less than, he's actually worth on the open market in his contract, he still makes a lot of money, but it is less than what he's actually worth. The perspective of him has changed because he does bring, everything that he can in those moments. So, you just got to bring it. And one player does, one player doesn't in those moments. So that's really what it's come down to. And I just want to say before we move on to the next thing, Nick, a lot of this and the fact that Treliving, in that report from Darren Dreger is frustrated, all of that, I will still stand by that, it's not all on Mitch Marner. Leafs management did fumble this a lot. Like, this player should have been traded 2 years ago to get something in return. And they didn't do that. They doubled down and they got the exact same results, which we all knew was going to happen. So obviously you still want to believe, but I think in the back of our heads, we all knew it was going to happen. So at the end of the day, this player should have been traded 2 years ago. Brendan Shanahan paid for it with his job far too late. Should have been earlier. And here we are at this point. Mitch Marner is probably going to walk for nothing.
Yeah. And we can also date back to the Montreal Canadiens series, 2021. Like, there's a million points that could have, you could make an argument after almost every series that they played beyond 2020. So, they canceled his yearly summer charity event. Makes sense. For all sides involved, not going to dive into that too much. JD Bunkis, I had this up while you were speaking a little bit. So for those of you who read it, it's basically, JD Bunkis calls out Mitch Marner a little bit, saying, Leafs gave you everything, drafted you when it wasn't a slam dunk, gave you a huge extension, never pushed you to be traded. What is he so mad about? And that's going to be the big question that I'm excited to hear the answer to, about what actually happened behind the scenes. Because I think if and when he goes elsewhere, whether that be to the Anaheim Ducks, which he's reportedly have interest in a 14-7, wherever he goes, Ducks would probably be an ideal team for him to go to, because just go on and ride into the sunset with a team that media isn't as crazy as, I'm not going to say irrelevant, but the media isn't as crazy, because they're going to go all in this offseason supposedly. So shout out to them. It's going to be interesting to see what the actual reason was and what happened behind the scenes surrounding all of these players. And there's a lot of different things. And this is the Plekanec stat you were talking about. Like, he didn't get the job done. Is it his fault entirely? Absolutely not. It's on the front office. It's on the teams that they built. It's not all on one player. But the way that things have unfolded, even dating back to last offseason with Darren Ferris and all these different things, it's all gonna come to a conclusion here. And it's funny because the two guys who have been most vocal in the off seasons the past 2 years, which was Nick Robertson last year requesting a trade and Mitch Marner this off season, are both probably going to be heading out of Toronto. So a fresh slate is coming, and we're going to keep you up to date with every step of the way. So make sure to hit that subscribe button. You guys are fantastic. Thank you guys for watching. See you later.